Welcome to another Quantum Conversation. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Hello, beautiful hearts. Thank you for joining us for another episode in this Quantum Conversation Summit Series, Timelines, Creating Your Highest Benevolent Outcome. And my guest today is Godelieve Willer. She is a powerful, multi-dimensional energy reader and seer. And as we talk about timelines, we're going to talk about super sensory abilities and how we can unlock these skills and why they're so important when we're understanding timelines. Let's welcome Godelieve. Hi, Godelieve. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Loren. It's an honor to be here on the New Earth One Network and to be connecting with you and your audience. So thank you for having me.
This is beautiful because we're talking about super sensory abilities. This is more of our multi-dimensional nature. And this is something where all of us as humans, some are already tuned in and tapped into it, as you are. But then there's so many of us that wish that we had those skills. And what you're here to share with us is that we all have them. We just need to unlock them. So that's going to be fascinating because we want to know more. But I think our question is, when we're talking timelines, and creating the highest benevolent outcome and feeding the timeline that we want to see, we have to do some cleanup. And that's where we also go multidimensional in the timelines. So in your understanding, how do timelines and multidimensionality and an awareness, these supersensory skills, help us understand the timelines that we're creating and dissolving and collapsing in the past?
Good question. So it's actually kind of makes good logical sense because a timeline in the future or a parallel kind of reality, you're not able to physically with your physical body senses tune into that. You're using what I call your super senses, right? And so where that's really useful is imagine you want to tune in and connect with a higher timeline, higher meaning maybe you're in a more ascended state or more in a self-empowered state. And that's when you want to connect to. Well, wouldn't it be useful if you can actually feel when you connect with that energy and you can feel the energetics and the alignment of that version of you? Right. And then wouldn't it be useful to be able to see information or hear information coming in? But you can imagine when you are able to increase or activate or open and awaken your supersensory abilities, it makes working with timelines so much easier. When I see a timeline, I'm using all of my senses, multidimensional senses to work with it, right? To identify when there's a block or some kind of energy that's out of alignment with that. And when I'm clearing it, right, how do I know it's cleared, right? Because I feel it shift, right? And I see what happens as a consequence of that shift. Everything rearranges and there's like a different outcome, right? So absolutely, when working with timelines, engaging your super senses is going to be a game changer.
And so developing our skills like this, our supersensory abilities, is really important to understand the timelines that were created and the multidimensionality of our timelines. What is your definition of supersensory abilities? We all want to develop this. How do you explain that? What is that?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked that question because there's a reason why I use the term supersensory abilities as opposed to psychic gifts, which is a very common one, right? So first of all, our supersensory abilities are what I view as your abilities as a spirit, not limited by the body, right? So in other words, I kind of view our physical senses as a kind of like a limited version of our real spiritual senses and abilities. You know, most people might think of them as an extension of your physical sight, hearing, knowing, feeling, but I actually see it as the reversed. And the reason why I don't like using the term psychic gifts, one, because the word psychic has a lot of negative connotations now, but also the word gifts. It kind of sets it up for people to understand it. Oh, well, that's something you're just gifted with, and if you're not, then you just don't have it. When really I see these, and it's been my experience that these are innate abilities that come with a body, come with us being a spiritual being, that we have access while in the body, and that we all have access to them, even though most of us don't tune into them. So
Yes.
specifically, yeah, specifically when I'm talking about the super senses, we commonly, a lot of people know them as clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, or the clairgnostic ability, and clairsentience. You know, the last two especially clairsentience, are really the least known and understood by most people. But most people are familiar with at least two or three of those: clairvoyance and clairaudience. You know, claircognizance, clairsentience can seem a little bit more mysterious, like what really does that mean? But those are the kind of major super senses that I believe everyone has access to. And once we begin to access these abilities and tap into that potential within us to develop them, is truly amazing. What happens.
Yes. And so how do we begin to tap into them? Let me ask you first, as you're going to explain that, how you came upon these abilities in your own life, your multidimensional abilities to see things and to read energies. What happened there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I have a bit of an interesting journey that eventually led me to believe that we all have these certain innate abilities and the potential to exercise them. So when I was born really turned on and really open and accessing at a pretty high level already, that those primary clair abilities that I mentioned earlier, right? So in particular, though, I was super clairvoyant and had incredible precognitive ability with like complete accuracy and vivid detail. I was highly telepathic, and probably the biggest one was I was extremely clairsentiently open. I felt everything. So because of that, especially, there was, you know, if I had to describe my childhood experience in two words, it would be pain and confusion. Pain because I felt everything around me in this, you know, this world. There's a lot of pain in it. And the confusion because I didn't understand why the people around me, why they made the decisions they did, and how you know, why humans acted the way they did. Right. So on this journey, then I began shutting down and trying to disown those parts of me that had me so connected to everything, because it was so painful and because it wasn't safe in my environment. And I mean by that, it was not approved of by my family and my community. In fact, my parents were terrified by my abilities. So it was very clear that if I spoke about my experience, then I would be punished or chastised. And basically, as a child, that's like survival, right? If you don't receive the love and acceptance of the people around you, especially your parents, right? So I'm going through this fairly quickly, but essentially I began shutting down parts of myself in an effort to try and be someone else, right? Someone else that would fit in, right? So in particular, I really polarized into my masculine because that was safer, right? I tried to avoid things that would remind me of my true nature as best as I could. So things like nature, it was painful to be reminded of all those truths that I was aware of, but then live in this world that didn't acknowledge those truths. So I found that incredibly painful not to be able to resolve that. Then there was a period of time when I had lost touch with myself so much that I had no idea who I was anymore. I didn't even know what I liked, what I wanted to do with my life, who I really was, what my purpose was. Like, I had abandoned myself so far in an attempt to be accepted and to try and belong in the world, that even though the only place I ever felt like I truly belonged was, you know, with other nature kingdoms and elementals, right? But I had abandoned myself so extremely that eventually the pain of living out of alignment with who I really was became so unbearable. And that resistance in me to reclaiming my true nature and stepping out as the real me was so great. It caused depression, serious disease in the body, and ultimately just a desire not to live anymore. I finally made the commitment that life wasn't worth living like this anymore, and I was going to say, screw it, I'm going to just be me. And if the world doesn't like it, then at least I gave it a shot, and I can die knowing finally for sure that I was a defective human unable to fit in, right? And when I did that, I had a huge aha transformation point, which I want to share with everyone today because I think some of you might be able to relate. But this realization, which I'll get to in a minute, began to change the way I saw myself and triggered my realization and memory of why I'm here right now and what my purpose is. I had an accelerated, massive healing journey after this. I had experienced extreme traumas and abuse throughout my life, starting from a really early age. And I finally began to unwind so much of that, right? And I noticed that as a byproduct of the healing, of the accepting of who I really am, of the getting back into touch with who I really was, my gifts and abilities began to open up, and not just open up, but expand. And then I would get really curious. And when I finally gave myself permission to explore them, it blew me away that I had abilities that must have been there the whole time, but I didn't even realize it simply because I had never tried to see what was there. From childhood, I was just trying to stop scenes, trying to stop feeling. All this time, if I had been able to actually welcome those gifts and explore into them, right? They had been there all along. I didn't realize. Although it was very purposeful that I did shut down during that period. So over many years, I started documenting my journey and exploring more of my abilities and observing in people and what I saw in their fields, and started really wanting to understand what's going on. Like, how is it possible that I can see an emotion in someone, but when I ask them about it, they have no clue what I'm talking about. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm not angry. I don't have anger. Right? Or I could read their heart's desire and then they would act against their own heart. And this confused me so much, right? And most of my life, I thought people just lied all the time about how they felt, right? I didn't realize back then that they actually just weren't consciously aware of what was going on inside them. So fast forward, because it's getting a long answer. I wanted to go back to that huge game-changing aha that I mentioned, that new realization. For many years, I never thought that I could teach others how to do the things that I could. It didn't occur to me because I was still looking through the lens of, I'm different. There's something wrong with me. I'm a defective human. I don't belong here. I'm different, right? But when I began looking through the lens of, I'm different, okay, I finally acknowledge that. But for what purpose might that be, right? It led me to realize, and as I unwound that wound of something's wrong with me, that old belief, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, it led me to realize the greater purpose for my design in being different and being here. I realized that I needed to be me in order to make a difference. It was my difference that was the key, which led me to also understand that what happened to me, the turning off and then the subsequent turning back on and expanding, that further expansion, that could be the case for others as well. And then when I decided to start teaching others how to begin unlocking their abilities, I saw that that assumption or that hypothesis was correct. That if we can unwind who we are not, that what is left is who we really are and who we have always been, which includes someone who can access higher information through what I call the super senses, those clear seeing, clear healing, clear feeling, clear knowing, those abilities that come with us as being a spiritual being.
Well, you are fully on your soul's mission. I've got goosebumps right now. And that's the sign too. We'll talk about that in a moment. What an incredible story. I want to go a little bit deeper into that story because I know, I mean, this is so common with light workers, especially those who were born awake or born open, that we do start to shut those down. So can you share with us the timeline of, so when you were born and then you were a little toddler and then you were just speaking open, how did your parents react? Would they just immediately just say, would they tell you to stop talking, don't think that way, that you were wrong? And what would you be sharing? Would you say, who's that person over there? Why do you feel that way? Can you share some examples of what happened that made you realize that you were defective? And then what age did you bring it back online?
Good questions. Yeah. So when I was younger, my seership is what I call it now, kicked in when I was pretty young. 5, 6 years old, I was already saying things. And of course, at that age, I didn't know that not everyone could see things and hear things the way I did. But between the ages of, let's say, 6, 7, and 10, 11, especially, is when my parents started realizing, okay, there's something really weird and wrong about this. Now, I grew up in a very religiously minded community and parents. My mother was terrified, and psychic abilities were evil, right? So at one point, it was probably, 8 years old, she asked me to write all the premonitions that I had in a notebook. And so I was like, okay, like, and I would just write it, and it would terrify her. So around this age of like 7, 8, 9, she really became terrified of it. She eventually, like, she would punish me and say, you can't talk about this, don't ever talk. And she burned that book. She signed me up for Bible study. And it was like, you cannot talk about this. And she would get quite firm and strict about it. And there was one event in particular that I was old enough to go, okay, this is going to really harm my life if I keep talking. And that was, I told my mom that we were going to see my grandmother, and someone was going to come to the house, and she was going to break down crying, and something bad happened because it really upset my grandmother. And my mother was really upset about this vision. And then sure enough, when we went to see my grandmother, that came through exactly. And when it happened, I was like, Mom, that's the person that's going to upset grandma, right? And my mother was immediately, so terrified. And she grabbed me and she locked me in the closet. And she's like, if you ever, talk about what you see again, like, you're never coming out of the closet, basically. And so that was really upsetting for me on multiple levels, because I loved my grandmother. I was upset. I didn't know what was going on. And that's the first, I was almost 10 years old at that point. I think it was 9, maybe 10. And that's the first time I really kind of was old enough to go, wow, mother doesn't approve of that part of me. Right. And so I started being a little bit quieter, although, some things I just didn't know that, what was okay. It took me a long time to kind of see the boundaries of the box that was acceptable by society. So, for example, the feeling things, like, we grew up on a farm, and I know there'd be things that happened that I know upset my mom, and she didn't want it to happen, but yet she okayed it happening. And I was like, well, why did you let that happen? Because I know that you didn't want it to happen. I could read your heart, whatever. I didn't say read your heart because I didn't know, but I could just say, I can see that, and she got really mad at me again, and also just because I have such a connection in feeling everything, I've never not communicated with plants. And so I love the plants on our property. And, my little brother, being a typical boy, he would get a sword and he would slash the high grasses in the meadow. And I would come running into the kitchen going, Mom, help me. Michael's like slashing and attacking the grasses. And my mother just snapped at me one time. And she's like, who cares, right? And I remember that was a big moment in my life too. I was like, wow, who cares? No one's going to help me here. Nobody sees what I see. Or at that time, it's not that I didn't think they could see. I thought they just didn't care. I thought these people just didn't care. I thought that they knew, but they just didn't care. It wasn't until years and years later that I realized, oh no, it's not that they knew and they still did those things. It's they didn't know any better. They didn't feel a connection with the plants that I did. They didn't feel the harm that they were causing. Right. So I had all kinds of experiences like that, seeing things too, hearing things. I was highly telepathic. So my parents, always accused me of eavesdropping. How'd you know that? You must have been eavesdropping last night. Like, all kinds of stuff like that. So I would say probably around the age of 10, 11, 12 is when I really started to make an effort to define, okay, what's the safe boundary? What things am I allowed to say? What am I not? And so I really started shutting down in a big way around in those ages. and just really trying, you go to high school, you become a teenager, then later in life, you like boys and you want to be liked and you want to have friends. So, I really wanted to belong and try and fit in and try and have a life. I remember the
Yeah.
next part of your question. If there's something else you want to say before I think I remember the next part of your question, but
Yeah, the next part, well, I have another question for you. Is that timeline? The next part of the question was, how did you, what age were you when you brought it back? And then that other question would be, what does your mom think of this today and your brother?
yeah. Yeah. So maybe I'll address that really quick. So my mom has passed. But before she passed, she acknowledged that there was something there and maybe it was a gift after all. Like she was still very religious when she passed away. Um, so she just didn't know what to think about it because it conflicted with her religious beliefs. But um, yeah, and that's pretty representative of a lot of like they're in a very strict kind of religion where you have to go through someone like a priest to hear God. You can't connect directly, otherwise it's the devil, right? So, and I understand, that's okay, right? I still love them, I still, but that's challenging for a lot of people. Like I'm sure I know why you asked that question, because a lot of your listeners will feel very feel different or feel afraid of being judged, or even like things like, oh, you're a weirdo or you're a flake or you're lying or whatever. When you start having these abilities turn on, yeah, there's this tendency to not tell anyone because you're afraid of others judging you.
Yes, and I do have to say something about that tender 8-year-old girl that you were. I'm going to cry right now. See, that's bringing up truth within my heart. Is that as 8-year-old girls are so in tune to who they are, to
Yeah.
your expression of self without any outside hindrance or influence. And you were just speaking your heart's truth. And so to see that you were shut down like that, that's
Mhm.
so, I mean, we can all sense and feel what that must have been like and why you shut it down to protect. And so then as you opened it back up, wow. What age was that? Was that after college or in your 20s?
Yeah,
Because that,
so good. Yeah, good question. So I moved away to university a few hours away from home. And while there, I think the distance of getting away from that environment, living with my parents and, stuff started to happen again that kind of reminded me of, that part of me. And I started to kind of explore again. So I started, that was the first, and I knew nothing about spiritual stuff at all then. But at that time in university, I must have, I don't know, found somewhere or looked at something, found a book or whatever. And I found a pendulum. And so it was the first kind of foray back into, maybe let's take a look about my old self and what was happening there, and started asking those questions. I had a lot of I would say major life events happen that kind of really shoved me into it. So I would like to say, but I can't say that I, actively and proactively went after reclaiming myself. I had a lot of wake up calls that occurred. I would say the biggest points was when I was in my very late 20s, early 30s. I started having experiences that were like life changing. So the mother started visiting me. I don't often talk about this, but and I started have beings come to me, and I started have really big visions again and again. I think it was because I had a major life event that catapulted me into a new. I had to relocate to a new town and everything, and I had some convalescence time because I was badly injured, and it was that quiet time by myself that I think created the space. And because I was physically very debilitated, that kind of created space. Um, and then I was like, I'm so wounded. I just became aware of how wounded I was. And it started this healing journey. Like, I want to heal myself. Now that for me was a bit of a journey, like about a decade, because I had a lot of, let's say, junk in my trunk, whatever you want to call it, but a lot of fear, a lot of distrust, a lot of like, I had zero self-love, which was reflected to me in my life experience, like a lot of abuse, a lot of terrible things like that. Um, it was the moment that I mentioned when I said, okay, I am so depressed. I am so sick. Like, I'm done living like this. I don't care if no one ever wants to be my friend. I don't care if I'll never attract a partner. Like, I just am so tired of pretending to be this, and at the time I was working as a business consultant. It's like, I'm tired of pretending to be this very analytical left brain person when, as soon as I, come home from work, it's like a whole nother world. And that living out of alignment with who I was eating me alive. And so when I made that decision and like that aha, when I said, okay, what if I'm different for a reason? What if there's a reason? Because I started having this inkling that I was here to do something. And then I had the realization, well, oh, maybe whatever I'm here to do, I need to be different. I need to have these abilities. I need to have this insight that I'm getting, right? That shifted everything for me. And that's when the abilities really started to come back online, like so fast, was just me going, okay, I want to be me again. And it was that big wound of something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Once I cleared that, then it was like, I don't know, I just like saw myself and my whole life in a completely new way. I
That
started to
is,
love myself and love my abilities,
you accepted and you gave yourself love. You had an awareness that you were not giving yourself love. You had experiences show up in your life that was knocking you off kilter to show you that you were not having enough love. And
Yeah.
you opening up to your own awareness of it, you giving yourself self-love is what collapsed that timeline. It shifted your timeline. It
Yeah.
shifted it into you being who you are today. So you literally created your highest timeline by accepting yourself.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It is. It is because it sounds so simple, but
It's not
really
sweet.
the experience of it wasn't simple. Like, it's simple, but man, is it powerful. Just saying, yeah, okay, I love myself and I'm going to love all parts of myself. That means even the weirdo parts that the world reflects back at me at the time was, that's a weirdo thing. Like, no. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I don't care if anybody knows what I'm doing because I'm so on target, on path, right? I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And now I totally see, it totally makes sense why I was born the way I was, why I shut down, why I reclaimed my gifts and expanded them, right? It's just incredible. And I need these gifts that I have for my purpose. And so many of your listeners, it's the same. It's time to turn on those super senses so you can start remembering who you are and why you're here also, right? And you can get that guidance on choices to make in your life, right? And bring in that information that wants to come in for you.
Yes, it's the guidance from that multidimensionality that we are, the great spirits, the beings that we are that give us that guidance. Wow. So I just see that, yeah, you chose everything. You chose your family to come in to give you deep lessons like that. And for you to come out on the other side, totally on purpose, totally on track, on your mission is so inspiring for others that no matter where anybody is in their own personal timeline on their incarnation, it can happen anytime, anywhere. We can pick it up like that. All right. So
Yeah.
then when we're talking about super sensory abilities, we all have them. It's like, what would you say? Sometimes there's questions that come up like, I said I get goosebumps, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I when I feel my heart, I'll like start bawling. I have friends that say, Loren, you cry at the drop of a hat. But I cry when my heart is so full and it's just like bursting open. It's like tears of love, tears of joy, not sadness,
Mm-hmm.
or a ringing in the ear,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes we tend to think, those of us who are working on this, when we say, I know this, then our ego mind can come in and say, you're making it all up. So our
Mm-hmm.
ego mind comes in and plays that shutdown as the great protector. And so maybe many of us have gone through similar situations like you, as you shut yourself down. We've probably shut ourselves down too to protect
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. But these are some of the experiences that are something to look at, right? These are
Mm-hmm.
all,
Absolutely.
what
So
are they?
it's so funny because there's a couple points I would love to make about that. There are so many people that receive information from their super senses. And most of them just stop there. It's like, okay, I have a really strong intuition, not realizing that that's just the beginning. That's like telling you, okay, you have this, like, are you going to open it up and are you going to explore it, right? So many people just stop there. And I have to say, if you're already experiencing things like that, and more, right? You're already, in the way I see it, you're already set up to unlock way more potential, and you're already set up for better success than the vast majority of humans on the planet, right? Most people on the planet really have no real access to their super senses. So even if you're getting the goosebumps, or you were just thinking of your friend and the phone rings, or you know how to finish your partner's sentence, or someone, or you just kind of know when to water your plants, right? Like when you're having, though, that shows that you're already tapping into some of your super senses. And it's like, why stop there, right? And I do know why a lot of people don't think they have abilities, because in school we don't talk about this, right? We're not taught in school that we're more than just physical beings, let alone that we have senses beyond the physical senses, right? And they're not acknowledged or nurtured, right? We close down our access. We stop accessing our super senses over time, and then they become weak and a bit atrophied, just like any other muscle, right? So most of us realize this actually on a small scale. So when it comes to like writing, or let's say styling your hair, right? We're so used to doing it with our one hand, right? That if you are dominant hand usually, and if you ever have to write with your opposite hand or curl your hair with your opposite hand, you notice right away how awkward it is, right? So imagine though, if you never did anything with that non-dominant hand, and literally it just hung there to the point where you even forgot that you even had a left arm. Those muscles will become so weak, if not completely atrophied, right? So makes sense? So is it any wonder then when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, or later, and you're like, you try a psychic exercise one day and it doesn't end up in immediate success, and then you conclude, oh, I'm not clairvoyant. It's like you have not used your muscles in so long, right? Which, so it's kind of like me going, I've never figure skated ever a day in my life. It's like me going out to the rink, putting on skates, getting out there and trying to do a triple axel jump right away, right? And then falling flat on my butt before I even stand up on my skates, right? It's like, and then concluding, well, I guess I'm just don't have that gift, right? It's like we're so harsh on ourselves sometimes, and we give up so easily. I do find that we give up so easily when it comes to this stuff. And also another big one is that people tend to compare themselves to
Yeah.
somebody's endpoint, right? So, or somebody's advanced level, right? There's so many like it's not too many psychics or intuitives that advertise, oh, I have a 20% success rate in my visions, right? No, right? It's people like that, like, people who are doing this kind of work, they that are using their super senses, they don't typically come out of the closet until they've gained a certain amount of confidence and mastery in their skills. And then people will compare their beginner level, let's say, attempts to that of an advanced person's level, let's say, right? And so that's just setting yourself up for, discouragement big time. You have to understand that there's a journey made, and they probably started where you were at one time. There was a part in my life where I felt I had completely lost my abilities. I didn't understand that they were just not being accessed at the time. I thought they were gone. I thought they were gone. I was so shut down, Loren, particularly my heart center, that I just, at one time, I had a boyfriend, he called me the ice queen. I wouldn't cry at any of the saddest movies. I wouldn't cry. Like, I had no compassion for anything. It was really kind of scary when I think about it. So there was that point where I didn't think I had any, but obviously I know different now, because the healing unwinds everything, and the reclaiming of yourself and loving yourself starts to open those gateways again, right? So there are so many people out there that think they don't have abilities, like supersensory abilities, but I'm telling you, you absolutely do. It comes with a body. It comes with being a spiritual being. There are things that I call gifts, because at a certain point I had to make a distinction, words to distinguish between abilities and gifts. So I believe that we all have access to these foundational abilities, right? The clear knowing, clear seeing, clear healing, clear feeling. And then some are also have what I call unique gifts that's really unique to them, that they bring through to in service to the world, let's say. Right. So that's when I reserve the word gift for that. That's something that's unique to that spirit, to that human, that body being, right? It's like their unique gift to the world. But in terms of your super senses, those ones I just listed, everyone has the ability to access them.
Everyone has them. And as you were talking, I was thinking about some of these. And so some people may have a stronger sensory, like Claire. Well, what's intuition?
Oh, well, that's a good. So I'm glad that you asked that. So I want to encourage people to move beyond vague intuition, because you're right. Intuition is a vague word. It just means like, oh, you get a
Yes,
feeling or something, but it's
we
so
override it,
limited.
and we
Yeah.
often override it. Like we're going out
Yes.
the door, like we should take the umbrella. And then we're so busy that we're like, nah, we don't need it. That's what I
Exactly.
call writing it. But then that experience, I want to share really quick an experience
Yes.
that talks
Do it. I
about
love it.
intuition. It was like I had a dream one night. It was very vivid, this dream. And in the dream, I woke up because I saw police lights in my rearview mirror, and it was like, and I woke up. Okay, that it was so startling that it woke me up. Well, the next day I was driving 45 minutes away, going to get on a highway, going to get in the HOV, high occupancy vehicle lane, but there was 2 miles where the little sensor that you pay for, it was still closed, and I was the only person in my vehicle. And I knew right from wrong. I was in it early. I wasn't to the point where I could use my little tab to pay for it yet. And I overrode it. I remembered the dream in that instant, like something about, and so I overrode it, and I got in that lane anyway. And guess what? The next moment, there were those flashlights, the police lights.
Wow.
It's like, oh man. And it was such a pain because I didn't have my updated car insurance. So I had to go to, the town, which was an hour away, for the ticket in court. I had to sit in court. So it took a lot of time. And that was a lesson in intuition. But
Absolutely. And so now, do you override your intuition?
no, I don't. Sometimes I do, and it kicks me a little bit. It's like small little things, but now I physically stop and I say, you know what? That's my intuition. I still override it time to time, and it always catches me. So now I'm getting better and better. So
Yeah, so you
that's
were
what,
tuning into precognition there. So you were
oh,
like seeing a future potentiality, and it was you that choosing to override your intuition or not is what chose that timeline, that experience.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My choosing to override it actually brought that timeline in. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
So,
see that it was purposeful in your higher self trying to get you to say, hey, you need to listen to your your guidance.
and you know what? Another thing on that same road, because I would teach aerobics and have to go to this city to go teach aerobics. And so I would listen to the radio. And another time, songs on the radio came through. So songs on the radio. So is that different? I mean, so see, now I'm like trying to put labels on all of it, but these are awarenesses that we each have. So as we are developing these senses,
Mhm.
what needs to be done? For example, um, I had a dream, honor the dream, right? I should have honored the dream, and instead of just like, just going, mindless, numb through my day with my coffee in my car driving. And then when I'm going to get into that lane, the dream flashes in my mind, but I was just not aware to it. So we kind of have to lean into it, right? We have to,
Yeah.
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 So
So
what's,
yeah, I've developed a framework for how to, because I kept getting, people come to me with the same questions. How do I open my psychic gifts? Why can't I hear or feel my guides? Or I've tried to see clairvoyantly, but nothing appears, or I don't see anything at all, right? Or I remember seeing things as a child, but somehow it stopped at a certain point and I don't know why. Or a very common one is I feel energy when I do my Reiki, but I'd like to be able to feel more and actually know what's happening, right? So I've developed this framework that I developed from so much experience, both with myself, analyzing, because I documented my entire journey and analyzing, okay, what moved the needle for me? What were those things if I had to pull out and say, okay, this is the component that really helped me unlock my gifts. So I analyzed myself, and also in working with people and observing what happens with people. And even when I'm observing children at the park and I can see stuff happen, I can see the decisions that their subconscious makes in what I call fracturing off certain parts and choosing certain pathways, right? So I gave myself permission, because really my mother instilled that into me, is you don't have permission to do that, right? So I felt it was evil to look at someone. It was invading their privacy. It was evil to look at someone's future, because as you know, as a child, I saw the future all the time. And my mother really drilled it into me that that was evil to see the future. But then when I gave myself permission, I really started observing all the people around me, myself, the people I worked with. And so I developed this framework. And essentially, if I just give you the high level overview, one, it's about unwinding who you are not. So looking at what's getting in the way. So from my perspective, the way I see things holographically, I can literally see areas of stagnation in the energy field, let's say. So many things that can be the case. Shut down chakra centers, like, very powerful beliefs, other people's energy in your field that are blocking things. Like, I could go on and on with all the different ways that we can shut down our abilities, or that our abilities get shut down, right? So the first part is dealing with that, right? Transmutation is the word I really love. It refers to alchemy, changing one element into another and upgrading it, right? So transmuting those kind of lower vibrational stagnant energies that no longer serve. They probably served you as a child, but they don't serve you anymore, right? The next part, which I won't talk too much about, but we will talk about in the course, is activations. At a certain point, there are activations that I've discovered that want to occur. I started noticing and working with people, and we clear some stuff, and then I would be guided to do certain things in their field, and then I would see this amazing shift. And I called it an activation. I started calling it an activation because that shift started activating a new system, started connecting different parts in their field. Especially now, many of us are hooking up our light bodies, right? There are certain activations that need to occur, right? So, and then the last two is, I'm big fan on retraining the brain. People don't realize this is something that I really started paying attention to. And I went back to my childhood and all those confusing moments, especially with my immediate family. I started analyzing what was going on. Why were I could see information hit their field. I could see their consciousness receive the information, but it never reached their conscious mind. That fascinated me my whole life. I finally started delving into what's going on. And what I realized, it's the brain. It's the physical human brain. We wire it. We train it as we're growing. And so most of us have literally just innocently, the brain is so fantastic and so adaptable. It learns what information should be brought to your conscious awareness and what information should simply be filtered out. And so if you had an early childhood experience and no one talked about these super senses and no one approved of them, then your brain would have just learned, okay, that doesn't apply here. It's not going to help me in any way. So we're just going to, that's not important information. We're just going to set it aside, right? The brain picks up on trillions of data bytes every second, right? And it has to choose which ones to bring to our conscious awareness. And so we train our brains. We literally create neural pathways. And so retrain is the third component of my framework, is because like you got to retrain your brain and begin to build new neural pathways in the brain. And there are some very simple, very direct ways to do that. It's actually not complicated at all. And then the last part is a practice component. We go back to that muscle, right? That you gotta use, you gotta strengthen that muscle. So you have to practice your gifts. And when you get that intuitive hit, you've got to follow it, because that's building muscle. The more you follow, it's like your higher self knows, oh, she's paying attention now, so we can give her more, right? So then you start the more you follow those leads, those hunches, that insight, the more insight you're going to receive. And it's like the more you act on it, it's like strengthens that muscle. The more you also build trust, because then you're like, yes, I had that vision and I made the decision according to that, and look at the outcome. So it boosts your confidence too, right? It's a muscle. You start building confidence, you start building trust, you start, yeah, it just builds and builds and builds. So it's the practice is the fourth part. So my acronym is TARP, and it's this framework.
Ah, okay.
So you do all of them in tandem. You remove what's getting in the way, you upgrade
Transmute
parts need to upgrade, you retrain the physical aspect, the brain, and you practice. Yeah.
and practice.
And
Okay.
practice is, the really fun part.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm excited, and I know others are excited too, because we've all had those moments where we've overrode our intuition, but that's
Mhm.
just the first step. That's just the start of it, where we really need to lean into it and open up into it more. And now I'm seeing it's so much more than just within us. It could be a breeze that blows on our face, right? If we're following it and opening up to it, it could be a bird that appears in the sky. It could be a sound, right? So it's nature reflecting back to us. So this is,
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's, intuition and following that. I would say that the super senses is when you go further than that. So you notice that that bird is a sign in your example. And then with
okay.
that, you have the clear knowing of what exactly that sign means, right? And in my opinion, the clairsentience is probably the one that trumps all the gifts. And even though it's the least understood, but if you can feel your way through life, non-physical and physical, that will never steer you wrong. I always use the example, you can receive a vision and you can misinterpret what you see, right? And a vision is limited to just what the vision you see. But if you can feel that vision,
Okay.
you know everything, and it's 100% accurate, right? Once, especially if you develop your clairsentient ability enough that you can decipher between subtle vibrations. So for example, feeling the difference between the vibration of peace and the vibration of calm, right? They're very similar to the novice, but as you get deeper and more subtle in your awareness, you realize that those are two vibrations, right? So there's always more expansion. And this is for me too. Like as I started exploring my abilities, how far can I take them? I just realized, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can do this. And it's only because, before I was just never exploring how far does this gift go, right? But you can go so deep and so expansive, and you can get so precise in your super senses, in your knowing, in your hearing, in your seeing, in your feeling, that, when you do unlock all of those, it leads to what I call your ultimate guidance system, right? Your ultimate guidance system for life and beyond, right?
We are so ready to unlock our ultimate guidance system. I'm so excited right now. I think we're all excited. I think we're all looking at our experiences in life, and You know, I mean, I'm thinking about something that just happened with a bird, and I got the big message, slow down. And so I know that's real. And
Yes,
when you were mentioning the feeling, I think I think that is one of the most overlooked, and what you said is right on there. It will never steer us wrong. And this is what we're being asked to do at this time right now. I guess we could call it being in the heart. The heart is the ultimate feeler, but
yes.
we can literally feel like a judgment, for example. We can feel how we're open and feeling loving and supportive and in bliss. And then one judgment, one thought snaps us out of that so quickly. So that's really important. And I think that's vital because we already, like you say, we already have these that most of us watching and listening to this, if not 111% of us, are
Exactly.
absolutely practicing this already. But it's
Yes.
time to take it to a more advanced level. And this
Yes.
is
Moving
exciting.
beyond just a vague
Yes.
intuition and really, yeah, using your super senses and being able to answer that question. How did that information come in and be able to answer it, right? Like it came in through feeling and knowing, or it came in through my clairaudience, or you know what I mean? Um, Opening all that up.
Open it, open it, open it. And so this is where your great teaching ability comes in. You've got great skills for this. I wanted to say also that your ability as on a multidimensional energy seer is you see the timelines. You had that precognizance. You see
Mhm.
timelines, and that's fascinating. So you have a great program for people. Let's talk about that now because you have this class that will help people expand these abilities. Tell us what goes on here. You've got lots of exercises and the real nuts and bolts of how we open to these super sensory abilities.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited to share this with your audience. I've created a course, Super Sensory Abilities, How to Unlock Yours. And so there's 4 live classes. So it's going to be interactive and live Q&A with each class. So the first class, we're going to talk about all about super sensory abilities. We're going to go a little deeper. So the questions like what exactly is clairvoyance and the different forms of clairsentience, which we kind of just touched on. Most people just think clairsentience is the ability to feel emotions. But I'm telling you, that's just one small part of clairsentience. That's what we call empathy, right? But what about the ability to feel into timelines, right? Or to feel your guides around you, or to feel what's happening in your energy field, right? Or to feel what's happening in the body of that bird that you're talking about, or the space in between. Like clairsentience is a huge, right? All of the super senses are way bigger than the general public realizes, right? There's various forms of clairvoyance. Most people don't realize. Clairvoyance has many degrees, and there's things like seership that fits in as a component of clairvoyance, right? Same thing with clairaudience. You have a component that's mediumship, right? But they're not one and the same. You can be clairaudient, but not really have mediumship ability, and vice versa, right? So it's more rich than you realize, all of this. Same thing with claircognizance. So we're going to go into detail on what some of these things are, exactly, and the variations, and how your individual nature will influence the expression of what you experience. We're going to talk about a lot of real examples so that you can see for yourself where in your life you may already be accessing your super senses. We're also going to cover some essential terms like what is subtle energy and where is the information coming from? So I get that question a lot, right? And Q&A time at the end. So I always stay to make sure everyone can have their questions asked. Then we will also do a super sensory ability self-assessment. So that's already really fun. So after the first class, you'll kind of walk away with an idea, okay, which one of your super senses you're primarily accessing at this time. The second class is about what determines your supersensory ability. This might be the most interesting for us on a personal level, right? Every participant, because you're going to start to be able to relate to the information. Okay, I think that's what happened to me. I think that's what a block I may have, for example. You're going to be able to also begin to recognize when and how information comes through, and also validate past experiences you've had. You can ask me questions about experiences you've had or that you do have, and all things related to that topic, like what determines the quality and the level of information you receive, right? But basically, you'll finally understand where you may be blocking your own gifts and abilities, right? And so this is a perfect setup for our live call 3, which is everyone in the course will receive a personal energy field scan and an intuitive reading. So live, so it's interactive. So you can ask questions too if you need clarifications, but and depending on how many people in the class or in the course we have, I will break it out into smaller groups, so it won't be a 3-hour call. But everyone in the course gets that personal detailed reading. And then finally, our live class 4 is how to unlock your supersensory abilities. So this is where I'll go deeper into that framework that I mentioned, the TARP framework. And you'll begin to understand what needs to occur both in your energetic body and your physical body, as alluded to, and begin to apply the steps of the framework right away. So I'm also going to go over the first 4 foundational key steps. I have this, the 12 steps to dramatically boost your psychic results. I'm going to go through those first 4 steps in addition to the framework with everyone in the class. So we're going to do those training exercises so you can literally experience before and after, how that makes those steps make a difference in your ability to perceive and receive information. So yeah, you'll understand and begin to apply some of the steps. And I will open up an extended Q&A here. So to do more readings, more Q&A, just offer assistance and guidance to help kind of set you up to move forward. All the recordings are included. Even if you have a question, if you can't make it to live, you can always submit your question in advance and I'll answer it on the live call so that you can listen to your answer via the replay. And also I'm including a bonus gift. It's a audio teaching and guided exercise called Retrain Your Brain to Become Aware of Subtle Energy. And so this is an audio guide and exercise that you can play multiple times to practice retraining your brain. So just the last note I want to say is that so for this course, some of my courses I have prerequisite levels or like an application process, right? Because I understand there's people at different levels. But with the interactive open program like this, I just want to say that I'll meet you where you're at, right? So I'll be able to see where you're at. And because it's such an interactive course with the Q&As and the personal readings and stuff, I'll be able to meet you where you're at and give you that guidance and insight that you need wherever you're at, whether you're at a beginner level or you're quite advanced already and you have a practice of your own. Most of my private mentoring clients are teachers. So I'm very experienced in working with people who are already kind of masters at their craft.
That is so cool because we have many healers and people stepping into those roles, and everyone watching is a new earth leader. And so this helps us be the way shower for the next generation to step into our skills and abilities and share them with the world. Oh my gosh, if all we do is help put people in their heart and connect to the higher self, we've done an incredible job. This sounds like a really beautiful program that's very supportive and expansive and
very supportive, expansive, and also will shed so much insight because so many people I see, like they come to me like they don't have their understanding. They're still in that place where they think they're broken, right?
yeah.
They don't have the understanding that it's all this potential and it's just, some very clear steps that they can take to start unlocking those unique abilities and those innate abilities. But this course is, all the fundamental understandings and the how-to, and the personal information through the personal readings you're going to receive. So you'll get direct personal insight on your own energetic makeup and what's blocking you right now. So yeah, this will be, you'll walk away with a a totally new way of looking at yourself and your abilities for sure.
That is so cool. Very, very expansive. And we are excited. I know that this is, we can read it in a book. We can try to read it in a book, but to have someone like you who's gone through it, that's redeveloped your gifts, that is such a beautiful guide for the rest of us because you've done it yourself. So that is just so helpful and beneficial for each of us. So I want to invite our audience to scroll down on this webpage. You'll see the details for that and all the dates. And again, you heard that if you can't join live, you'll get the recording. So even if you join in progress, you'll still be able to catch up and be fully encompassed in the training and the expansion of your abilities. Wow, very, very cool. I also want to say, wherever you're watching or listening to this episode, there's a link in the description box that will get you to that special offer. Very cool, Godelieve. It's so refreshing to see how you have expanded. Like when your parents shut you down, your mom shut you down with such fear because of her own fear, for you to come through the end of it and with love for life and on purpose on your mission. This is a story that we keep hearing with light workers around and around. And we sure came in to clear a lot of baggage, didn't we?
Yes. Oh my
So
God, yes.
thank you for transmutating the obstacles in your life and
All of us.
updating your lifetime. Yeah, it's really,
All of us. That's one thing. When we heal ourselves, it's like we work as proxy for the rest of humanity. We affect the morphic fields of all humans. When we heal ourselves, when we transmute something within ourselves, it affects the entire collective. So yeah. And I love that you just brought that up again, the fact that, I did shut down. And it wasn't just, from the approval of my parents. I, in a very big way, consciously chose. I was very aware of my choice, even as a child. Like I really remember sitting there at night in my bed going, okay, I don't want to see this anymore. Stop showing me this. And what, like I very consciously also chose because of the pain. Like I witnessed a lot of pain. I don't want to get into detail, but I grew up on a farm and animals, and I have such a connection to all of that, right? So I felt pain constantly and I had to turn away because I couldn't handle it. It was unbearable, right? And so so a lot of that was my own. But the fact that I, then reclaimed and opened up my gifts again, I think that's important because sometimes I forget that not everybody realizes that. And so I had someone recently, a client recently, so easy for you because, you're like this. I'm like, oh, but I wasn't always, right? I was not always. And there was a certain point where I really hit a dark place and I didn't have much hope for humanity, let alone myself, right? I just saw so much as a child. And I think I was geared after my early childhood, really looking for the dark places to avoid because I was like, I don't, I need to know of it. I had the idea that I need to know they exist so I can, but so I was not I was not the happy person that I am today. That's for sure.
and that's the inspiration and that's where you meet everybody where they're at. So if there's anyone out there that's a healer and wants to accelerate their gifts, that's a beautiful way to work with you to do that. And then if there's some who are just not feeling their mission or feeling their guides or feeling alone, this is a great course for that, to just
That's so great. Imagine if you had your super senses, especially that clairsentient ability, you will never feel alone again, right? You literally can, I connect and talk to the plants all the time, the beings around me. I'm just pointing to birds right now because there's a few birds outside my window. Like you never feel alone anymore, right? When those gates open up. It's a good point.
We are ready to open those floodgates. Let's call them floodgates, because when
if
we
you're
open,
listening to this, then you are ready, right? 100%. Whoever's tuning in, especially if they've made it this far in the conversation, then it's time.
It's time. And so again, I'm going to implore those who are watching at this point to check out this offer, because this is something that the personal attention that you give to people is almost, it's like a hybrid of a personal session in a live setting, in a group setting. And that is really special because that accelerates one's growth in the journey to have your insight saying, this is it. And that's an aha moment for each person. And those aha moments are the expansion points, as you witnessed in your own life as well. And so because of that support and because of the time that people get to spend with you and the questions, literally any question or sharing of experiences is welcome and appreciated because it helps the whole group see
It does.
in their own makeup. And
Yes.
the price of this is really very special. I want to say that normally this is something that's much, much more than the price that we're offering this for.
Totally.
And with the personal time in front of you, it's such a gift. It's such an investment for less than going to a chiropractor or just Mas Menos, really, or about that price. This is like your light body, your super sensory, and an investment in your super sensory. It's an appointment in your a chiropractic appointment for your super sensory skills.
Yeah, I love that.
And you get force. Good, good. Well, this is really wonderful. I am feeling so fresh and so ready to go out and look at the world in new ways that you've opened our eyes up just in this conversation, let alone taking the course with you and diving deep into it with all the exercises and the experiences that you offer. But this has shifted our world, and that in itself is so wonderful. So we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. And as we say goodbye, we can say, I always love to ask a question on, if we're talking timelines and creating the highest benevolent outcomes, what is your thoughts? What is your vision of the future as you stand on your mission on Earth? Do you see that world where everybody's living like this?
I see, I have full confidence now. If you had asked me 20 years ago, it was, but I see what I see now and I feel it too. I know it's there. I know it's real. Beyond imagination, the beauty, the empowerment, the ease, the grace, it's a completely different reality than what we're experiencing here that we can't imagine, so much so that even the laws of physics are completely different. It's literally, as I'm sure all your listeners are aware of, because you talk about too, this kind of bifurcation or this kind of new Earth or dimension that Earth is shifting into, right? And so we have the ability to choose which timeline do we want to be on, right? So when I tune into that, and I do it daily, right? It's there, it's palpable. Like, it's not going to happen. It's already happening, right? Yeah.
New Earth is a frequency that we reach for. Yes.
There you go. Yes. That's a big
Wow.
topic that we just put in one or two sentences there, but that could be a whole nother show, just a conversation just on that.
Yes, New Earth is a frequency. And so that's why it's already here. And that's why in these days, it's so important to never let anyone, any person, any place, or anything take us from this light that we hold within.
Yeah.
And your work, Godelieve, is helping people expand this light within so that the super sensory abilities are like icing on the cake, ice cream.
Yes. I love that you say that. Absolutely. It's funny because sometimes you have to offer something, put something out there that people, like, the human mind is interested. Oh yeah, I want to open my psychic abilities. But really the way I see it is that is the icing on the cake. That is the natural consequence of opening the heart, of connecting to your divinity, of bringing higher streams of your own higher self energy into the physical body, right? That is the natural byproduct, that those pathways open up, right? So you said it so beautifully. It's the icing on the cake.
All right. So thank you, beautiful Godelieve Willer, for being here. And everyone, thank you too. You can see what a beautiful, precious teacher Godelieve is. And we hope that you're excited for this to expand your abilities. So we're going to just ask you one more time, sign up now, get involved with this. This is a beautiful investment that I just think changes the world in the heart opening ways. And wow, there's ways when we do things like this, then there's new earth businesses to be gained from.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that's more questions that you can ask Godelieve too, like how can I fold this into my business? So
100%. I work with so many entrepreneurs, business owners, etc. Imagine using your super senses to make decisions at work. Like it's amazing.
yes, that's how we change the world. And so that we
Absolutely.
are forever grateful, eternally grateful for you. Godelieve Willer, thank
Likewise.
you. Thank you so much. This is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lorraine Gailey, and the New Earth One Network that you birthed so long ago. It's been a beacon of light for humanity. I know it was for me because very long time ago, I would tune into your shows and it gave me hope that there was hope for the world because there was people like you spreading the light that you were spreading. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, Lorraine Gailey.
Wow. Well, thank you for spreading your light as well and being a beacon to so many others. And everyone listening, you were all a beacon as well. I love talking about these topics, and I know you do too. So just get yourself trained more in these skills. And we've got a whole world to shift, 8 billion people to assist. And this is how we do it. All right. Beautiful,
So
Godly.
much
Thank you.
love.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. I'm Lorraine Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.